Is this the real reason you can't feel fulfilled? You've done everything that they told you would make you feel like a man. You've got the career, you show up, you work hard. Maybe you've even built the relationship, the house, the reputation. And yet when you're finally alone, when there's no one else around, you feel this weight. Like something's missing, but you can't put your finger on it. A tension in your chest that you can't stretch out. Pressure behind your eyes that never fully leaves. You've learned how to do everything right, but you don't feel right. And the worst part is you've been carrying it for so long that you've convinced yourself that it's normal, but it's not. Now, I didn't always have the language for what I was feeling. I just knew that no matter how much I achieved, it never lasted. The high of hitting a goal would just fade in hours, and the relationship would feel close, and then distance again. And the success? It just made the silence louder. It took me years to realize that I wasn't chasing results, I was running from wounds. Because here's what no one tells high-performing men. You can have discipline, drive, and focus, and still be emotionally stuck. Not because you're weak, but because your strength was built on top of pain, not through it. And what I've found both in myself and the men that I now work with is that it usually comes down to 4 specific emotional wounds. Most of them formed long before you ever had a say in it. But they've shaped nearly every part of how you think, love, lead, and live. If you don't look at them, they run the show. But once you do, everything starts to change. The first core wound is the absent father. And for a lot of men, this one runs deeper than they want to admit. When I say absent, I don't mean that he just walked out the door one day. He might have been in the house every single night, dinner at the table, watching TV in the other room, but emotionally, he wasn't there. No presence, no praise, no reflection. You never got that solid masculine gaze that said, "You've got this, I believe in you, I see the man you're becoming." And when that's missing, you improvise, you start performing for approval. You build your identity around success because success, that gets attention. You become the good man by becoming the invisible man. Never a burden, never a failure, but also never fully you. And that pattern, it follows you into adulthood. You crush goals, but feel like an imposter when the praise comes in. You lead well on the outside, but on the inside, you're constantly second guessing. You look confident, but you live in quiet fear that one wrong move will prove you never had what it takes. This wound creates a void, and men try to fill it with everything. Money, women, validation, hustle. And when that doesn't work, they fill it with isolation. Because it's safer to be alone than to be seen and found unworthy. And maybe you've noticed this too. You don't trust men. You don't let them get close because deep down, you still feel like that boy who didn't get chosen. And if your father couldn't stay, what makes you believe that any man will? So you become the man without a map, carving a path blind, trying to lead others while you're still unsure where you're going. But here's the truth that I had to learn. You don't heal this by proving yourself. You heal it by turning inward. You become the man who looks yourself in the mirror and says, "I see you. You've done well. And I've got you now." And you find other men, brothers, mentors, elders who don't need you to perform. Men who aren't threatened by your power and aren't repelled by your pain. Brotherhood rebuilds what the father wound took, and it starts with one decision: to stop pretending you're fine and to start letting yourself be seen. The second wound is the overbearing father. This is the dad who didn't lead you, he ruled you. Everything was on his terms. Your voice didn't matter, your feelings, weakness, your mistakes, a reason to punish and not guide. You grew up walking on eggshells, trying to read the room, figuring out what version of you was the safest to show. And here's what that does to a boy. It wires your nervous system for compliance or rebellion. You either shrink or explode. There's no middle ground. And as a man, that plays out in every area of your life. In work, you either avoid responsibility because you're terrified of being wrong, or you become controlling, micromanaging everything because deep down, you never trust anyone to do it right. In relationships, you either play nice and avoid conflict, or you try to dominate every argument, not because you're strong, but because you're scared of losing control. This wound is the voice in your head that says, if I'm not perfect, I'm not worthy. It's the tension in your jaw when someone challenges you. It's the shame that creeps in when you make a mistake and feel like you've just lost all value. I know this one well. I felt it rise up in moments where I was supposed to lead with presence, and instead I collapsed or overcompensated, because that's what I saw growing up. I didn't witness leadership. I witnessed domination, and I thought that they were the same, but they're not. Real masculine leadership is not about control. It's about clarity. It's about standing in your truth. Not because you need to overpower anyone, but because you no longer need to prove anything. Healing this wound means setting yourself free from your father's shadow. It means becoming a man who leads from center, not from fear, not from wounds, not from ego. It means giving yourself permission to fail without crumbling, to speak up without attacking, to hold power without becoming a tyrant. This wound says that I had to obey or be crushed, but healing says I now choose who I am without needing to crush anyone else. That's what healthy masculine power feels like. And it's yours to claim once you stop reacting to the man who shaped you and start becoming the man you actually are. The third wound is the neglectful mother. And this one's quite tricky because a lot of men don't even realize that it's there. There was no abuse, no screaming, no chaos, just silence, disconnection. A mother who was too busy, too overwhelmed, or too emotionally numb to really see you. And as a boy, you learned quickly, don't expect too much, don't feel too much, don't need too much. You became low maintenance, easy. The one who didn't cause trouble because the only way to get love was to not need it. But here's the cost of that survival strategy. You disconnected from your own emotional world. You numbed out. You learned to suppress. And now, as a man, you can't feel much of anything. You might be calm on the outside, but inside there's nothing but flatline. Your woman says, I can't feel you. And she's right. You're in the room, you're showing up, but emotionally, you're fucking miles away. You're there, but you're not with her. You don't cry, you don't open, you don't rage cleanly. You just suppress it all until you snap or it leaks out in sarcasm, distance, or passive shutdown. You're successful, but your nervous system is locked in emotional frost, and intimacy feels like a language that you never learned. Brother, that's not your fault. That's a wound. You didn't learn to ignore your emotions because you were broken. You learned it to survive. Because when you did try to express what you felt, no one met you there. So eventually, you stopped trying. But the man you're becoming, he doesn't want numbness. He wants to feel. He wants to lead from wholeness, not just function through freeze. Healing this wound starts slow. You sit with your feelings instead of running from them. You let the tension in your chest speak. You learn the difference between real calm and just emotional shutdown. You open. You breathe through discomfort. You begin the long, long road home to your body. And when you do that, not only do you become more available to others, you become more available to yourself, and that's when intimacy stops being a threat and starts being sacred ground. The fourth wound is the devouring mother. This isn't a wound of abandonment, it's a wound of over-attachment. It's when your mother loved you, but loved you in a way that kept you small, close, dependent, bound to her. You weren't raised, you were emotionally absorbed. You were her golden boy, her therapist, her reason for holding it all together, and she made you feel like the center of her world, but only if you stayed where she needed you. You didn't get freedom, you got emotional fusion. And so now, as a man, intimacy feels like a trap. You crave love, but once it gets too deep, you fucking run, or sabotage, or shut down. Because somewhere deep in your nervous system, love doesn't feel like expansion. It feels like a loss of self. You carry guilt around success. guilt around separating, even guilt around being your own man, because that means leaving the emotional bond that was never allowed to loosen. And the worst part of it, you never really had your own identity. You shape shift in relationships. You lose yourself trying to be what your partner needs, because that's what you learned to do from the start. You were never taught how to be your own man. You were taught how to be her emotional caretaker. And now, every time someone gets too close, your body screams for space. But this isn't love. This isn't freedom. This is trauma bond disguised as affection, but healing it starts with separation. Not rejection, not blame, just truth. You need to find where you end and others begin. You need to carve out space in your life that is only yours, your path, your mission, your truth, not what keeps other people comfortable. The man you're becoming isn't afraid to love, but he refuses to abandon himself to do it. He can hold intimacy without being consumed by it. That's the medicine for this wound. And it starts when you finally stop calling enmeshment connection and start defining your own boundaries with strength and clarity. These 4 wounds, the absent father, the overbearing father, the neglectful mother, and the devouring mother, they don't just go away. They get buried, they get disguised, and they drive your decisions from the shadows. You build your whole life trying to outrun them. You wear success like an armor, like you perform masculinity instead of living it. You tick all the boxes and still wonder why you feel like a stranger in your own skin. But here's the thing. You're not broken. You're not ungrateful. You're not soft. You're just wounded. Like almost every man I've ever worked with, including myself. And when you finally have the language for those wounds, you stop blaming yourself. You stop trying to fix everything with more hustle. You stop making your pain mean something's wrong with you, and you start the real work, the inner work, the work of coming home to yourself. Not to become perfect, but to become whole, because that's the man the world needs. That's the man your partner's been aching to feel. That's the man your younger self was hoping that you'd become. And this is your invitation to meet him. If this hit anything in you, if even one of these wounds made you pause and say, that's me, then I want to send you something. It's a book that I wrote called This is a book that I wrote called The Boy Behind the Man. And it breaks all this down. Not just where the wounds come from, but how to finally begin healing them. For real. No bullshit, no shame, just truth. This isn't some surface level self-help, but it's the work I had to do when everything looked fine on the outside, but I was crumbling inside. So if you're ready to stop performing and start reclaiming the man underneath it all, comment stuck below and I'll send it to you personally. You don't have to carry this alone anymore, but you do have to decide. That's where it starts. See you tomorrow.